Good afternoon, everyone. It is 1:30 and I will call this regular meeting of Council of the Municipality of Jasper to order for June 17th, 2025. Welcome all of assembled council. Welcome to Municipality of Jasper Administration, JRCC members, and welcome to members of the public who are populating our gallery en masse, which is very good to see. And welcome to those who are joining on our Zoom link or will watch later on our YouTube channel. As we are in now the middle of National Indigenous History Month in Canada, I begin by acknowledging that the municipality of Jasper is on Treaty 6 and 8 territories, as well as the Jasper House Métis District. This land is the traditional territory, meeting ground, gathering place, traveling route, and home for the Denza, Assiniwatchee Winawak, Assiniwatchee Niha, Nihiawak, Anishinaabe, Secwepemc, Ayitka, Wichitabi, Mountain Métis, and Métis. The municipality of Jasper acknowledges the land to honor the relationship Indigenous peoples have with this land, to remind us of our responsibility and obligations to this place and to Indigenous peoples, and to affirm our accountability to address the ongoing impacts of colonization that continue to affect Indigenous peoples. Councillors, you have today's proposed agenda before you. Are there any additions, deletions, or other alterations to be made to the agenda? Being none, I would look for a motion that council approve the agenda for today's meeting as presented. Deputy Mayor Wilson, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Agenda item 3, we have before us for approval, the regular meeting minutes of June 3rd, 2025. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? Seeing nothing, may I have a motion, please, that council approve the minutes of the June 3rd, 2025 regular council meeting as presented. Councillor Keller-Granby, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. And agenda item 3.2, we have before us the meeting minutes of the committee of the whole meeting of June 10th, 2025. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? Councillor Hall.
Thank you very much, Mayor Ireland. No corrections or omissions. Just I wanted to speak to the letter we received last week from the Chamber and Tourism Jasper regarding congestion around the fuel stations. And I had the opportunity to speak to Stabby, owns the Petro-Canada gas station, and just got a little bit of an update of what they're doing down there to help mitigate the congestion. So they take deliveries of gas only after 9 or before 6. Their head office is committed to making sure they don't run out of gas this summer. Like if they're getting close and Hinton has a truck, it'll come here instead. He's noticing they're busy between 9 and 11 in the morning and 3 and 6, and they'll have staff outside in their area in safety vests directing traffic through. Just last week, Councillor Melnick spoke to residents getting on board, filling up when they're not busy, and they're open 24 hours. In fact, most gas stations are. I was really impressed with his dedication to helping the congestions. And he also noticed, which I just thought was an interesting note, was that the grocery store has very different busy hours than they do.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hall. I see no hands suggesting that there is a need for any alteration to the minutes, so I would ask for a motion that council approve the minutes of the June 10th, 2025 Committee of the Whole meeting as presented. Councillor Waxer, thank you for that. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 4, delegations. This is the point on our agenda where any member of the public is welcome to speak to any matter on our agenda. For those who might be here, however, to speak to the matters which fall within agenda item 7, which is the public hearing related to policy amendments regarding residential densities, I would invite you to wait until that portion of our agenda and we open the public hearing. But if there is anyone in the gallery who wishes to speak to any other matter on our agenda today, you are welcome to do so. I see no rush to the microphone, so I will move to agenda item 5, correspondence. Item 5.1 is the, what is it? I was going to say it was the correspondence that we received last week, but I best check. But in any event, is there any councillor who wishes to speak further to the correspondence that we received, which is identified under agenda item 5.1 from the Jasper Park Chamber of Commerce and Tourism Jasper? If not, I would invite councillors, if inclined to do so, to speak to correspondence at agenda item 5.2 of today's agenda, another letter from the Jasper Park Chamber of Commerce. And before I get myself too far out of order, perhaps I'll return to 5.1 and seek a motion that council receive that correspondence for information. Deputy Mayor Wilson, thank you for that. All those in favor? There are none opposed. Thank you for that. Similarly, if there are no comments about the correspondence itemized as agenda item 5.2, I would look for a motion that council receive that correspondence for information. Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Your Worship. We went quickly to voting on item 5.1. I think in the meeting minutes, we had asked administration to come back to council regarding the correspondence under 5.1, and I'm wondering if administration would be able to bring forward additional information relating to correspondence in 5.1.
Your Worship, happy to do that. So at the last meeting, when this item came up, it hadn't made the agenda in time, and so it's presented on today's agenda for the public record. But at the time, committee directed administration to report on any possible efforts for amelioration of the identified problem. And so I just wanted to report that administration has looked at the issue of congestion at gas stations at a number of different aspects. Councillor Hall mentioned a conversation with one of the proprietors. Administration is aware of it from conversations with the operators that there is no concern over fuel accessibility. It really is just traffic congestion on streets, I think, is the issue that Tourism Jasper and the Chamber were raising. And we've looked at it from a couple of different perspectives of what can be done on the private property, what can be done on the public property, whether there are communications approaches, whether it might be possible to establish temporary fueling locations, whether there are engineering approaches or enforcement approaches that we might like to take. So there are a variety of options available to the municipality. At this time, we haven't taken any action because council actually hasn't asked us to do so. In discussion, administration's identified that one possible action would be to engage a traffic engineering firm. There are consulting firms that specifically look at traffic flow and how to manage traffic. This could be a small project, likely under $10,000, to get some outside advice on different approaches that could be taken to manage the traffic flow on public property. Administration would also make the observation that this is likely an issue through the peak summer season. We wouldn't imagine making any long-term physical improvements, so we wouldn't see that there'd be a large capital expense. And we weren't clear whether council wanted us to take any action at this time to investigate the issue and develop actual sort of mitigation approaches. So We would be happy to bring back a report at a future committee of the whole meeting to outline this a little bit more specifically, or if council wanted to give us additional direction to, identify, and bring forward recommendations for actions, we'd be happy to do so. So administration has met, has a pretty broad view of the issue. None of the potential solutions come without cost. It's either additional staffing, some temporary fiscal changes to the way the roads in that area are used. And in any case, we would like to get some professional advice about what might be the best approach. Because I think all of us as community members would probably have opinions. It might be useful to get traffic engineers to give us a little bit of advice. And that wouldn't, again, come without cost. Administration estimates that it'd be about $10,000 to do that kind of review, to come up with recommendations. And I think the question in front of council is it worth doing that? In your estimation, given that this may be a limited window where this, where we see this challenge. We don't know that it will continue on in, beyond the summer. Likely not. We haven't seen it sort of over the course of the winter, the level of congestion that we expect that we'll see. And as the other gas stations get rebuilt, obviously the need will change. So we are happy to take any direction council might like to give us.
Thank you. Mr. Given, I see your hand, Councillor Hall. Councillor Milne, you raised the issue. I invite you first.
No, thank you. I'll defer to Councillor Hall.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I wonder, because this challenge this summer is directly related to the wildfire, would there be any DRP funding that could help with the cost?
That's one of all the aspects of the issue that we explored. That wasn't one of them. I would say that would be something we might have to take away. It is, as a result of the wildfire, certainly. But the congestion on public streets is sort of a regular feature of Jasper. So I'm not sure that we might be able to make that case, but I wouldn't say that it's a slam dunk.
Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. You too, Mr. Given. Last week we had talked that maybe the bus companies might be able to work out a deal with Parks Canada municipality to use the fueling station over in the industrial area down on compounds. I was wondering if there was any uptake on that.
Director Fark, can you maybe speak to that?
Certainly. So thank you for the question. We did follow up. We have explored the issue with Parks Canada. And for technical reasons, the pumping and the facility there are not actually capable of handling any additional volume over what is currently there. And there's also not the appropriate traffic accommodation in place to manage that type of traffic at that location. So unfortunately, that is not an option.
Thank you for that, Mr. Park. Last week I did see one of our bylaw officers down at one of the sites by the grocery store and Petro Canada, and they were doing a great job of controlling traffic. I'd be interested if we could see if we could find some funding for some extra bylaw officers that may be able to control the traffic. I found it very effective. Like, they did a great job. That's all I have to say. Like, I was there waiting to turn, and I was there for about 5 minutes, but they got the traffic, got the cars and the buses in, and people across the road safely to the grocery store.
Anything else from councillors? Councillor Waxer?
I just wanted to make the comment that I have too observed real congestion at that area and real concern around traffic safety. And I don't know that we're guaranteed that the gas stations will be up and running in 2026, the ones that were lost. So from my perspective, it does seem to make sense to invest in investigating reasonable options for controlling the traffic in that area.
I wonder, Mr. Given, whether there has been any communication with Parks Canada about educational opportunities to ease congestion. So as was noted last week by Councillor Melnick and again today by Councillor Hall. Residents can be advised that there are less busy hours and it might be the time to fuel up. But if there was material presented to visitors, say at the gate or at the campground, to encourage them, particularly if they're hauling holiday trailers, park the trailer, set it up and just drive the pulling vehicle in, because I have noticed anecdotally that much of the congestion is because there are huge trailers taking up so much space that don't need the fuel themselves. Not quite the same with motorhomes, but there's an opportunity, it seems to me, to get that messaging out through Parks Canada. That might also help ease congestion, and as Councillor Keller-Rempe indicated, if other operators with large vehicles in town can do the same. So perhaps don't need maybe to be affixed to a truck when you go for gas. Just suggesting that there is work that could be done at a multitude of levels to help ease the congestion.
Your worship, there certainly is work that can be done at a multitude of levels. I think with traffic management, I think there's three broad strokes of approaches that can be taken: education, enforcement, and engineering. So education, basically communication, and getting the word out there, exactly as council's discussed. Enforcement, writing tickets to change people's behavior, encourage them to not block roadways and not to stop on the roadway. And engineering, where you might make physical changes, which could include changing lane marking or patterns of travel. What administration is saying is all of these things are possible. At this time, council hasn't asked us to develop a plan to do any of those things, and some of them would come with a cost. So really what we're saying is that council wants us to actively undertake work on this, because there is, as we've already identified at the table, there's a real wide variety of things that the municipality could be responsible for, others might be responsible for. Some would come, some low cost, no cost, some might be higher cost. And so we would just like direction from council that you would think us to create a plan, or would like us actually to take action.
Councillor Waxer, you look like you're about ready.
Just give me 1 second. Oh, okay, that council direct administration to gather direction from a traffic engineering firm for dealing with the congestion issues at the current open gas stations.
Thank you for that, Councillor Waxer. Mr. Gibbons, has sufficient clarity there?
Yeah, that's clear, your worship. That narrows the scope. We engage a firm, get advice on how we can best use the public roadways and any changes that we might want to make. That's something we can do relatively quickly. And then if there's any need to get council approval for any changes that might be required, then we would come back, or we would just work to. That does narrow the scope.
Thank you for that. There is a motion then on the table. Any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Melnick?
Thank you, your worship. We have the motion to direct administration to gather information in the interim. Through you to Mr. Gibbon, is it possible that bylaw might spend more time in those two locations, especially at the peak periods, to try to enhance and improve the traffic situation?
Your worship, we could, in consultation with the Director of Protective and Legislative Services, see what might be possible. One reminder that I would give is that our bylaw team is relatively small, and they don't actually have right now authority to enforce things, moving violations essentially. And so we could enforce our municipal traffic bylaw, but we couldn't enforce provincial rules. And council will bear that issue, and that's something we're working to rectify. So we could see what might be possible. I'm not sure that we would get the effect that council might like, and the cost might be prohibitive when compared to pilot, engaging a private firm. There's lots of, I mean, boy, Jasper, we sure see a lot of them right now of firms that do flagging and traffic management. It probably would be more cost effective to engage a firm like that rather than using our uniformed bylaw officers.
Thank you for that.
Councillor Keller.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm introduced to Mr. Given. If we were to use an outside company, do you think DRP, we might be able to get some funding for this?
Your worship, for Councillor Keller MP. So as I mentioned before, there might be a case to be made, but that wouldn't be a slam dunk. So it would be uncertain whether we could make that argument or not. It's something we could try. Again, given the sort of window that we have of the peak season in Jasper, dialogue with the province to see if we might get funding to do something like that. We could have half the summer season over before we get a response. So possible, potentially worth looking at, but we start to lose control over timelines if we're waiting on funding from an external source to do something like that.
Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? I will call the question then. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. So, Mr. Gibbons, you have some direction and we look forward to the early retention of that specialized advice and report back to council. I will then return to agenda item 5.2. Are there any comments from councillors regarding that particular correspondence? If not, I would look for a motion to receive that as information. Deputy Mayor Wilson, thank you for that. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. And then there is agenda item 5.3, correspondence from Tourism Jasper. Any comments with respect to that matter? Go ahead, Councillor Moda.
Well, I didn't want us to just cruise by and not acknowledge that, that we receive them other than by accepting them as correspondence. So I appreciate the feedback. I'm not speaking on behalf of council, but I think all of us are taking the time to read and after the public hearing today, take some of that information as opinions from the business community and the tourist sector and factor that into the decisions we have to make in the future. Thank you.
Well, that future will soon be upon us at agenda item 6.2. So those two items, we can come back to the general observations in those two pieces of correspondence when we deal with agenda item 6.2 and join with Councillor DeModa in thanking the authors of those two letters to address the issue of values and recognition of the fundamental tourism industry to the well-being of our community and to our future sustainability. So by accepting them, we are adding them to the record, but there is an opportunity coming up shortly to discuss the letters in the context of agenda item 2. So again, I would look for a motion to accept the letter from Tourism Jasper, which is in the agenda as item 5. You receive that for information. Councillor Waxer. Any discussion on that? I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 6, new business. The Jasper Recovery Coordination Center progress updates, and I suspect Director Fark is here for that.
Mayor Ireland, as usual, you suspect correctly. Members of council. So I will provide a brief update. On the interim housing side of things, we have 237 households that have been occupied on the interim housing units. We have a number of additional units that are still yet to be filled. Their offers are out and we are filling them on a rolling basis. And we've had a few turnovers already where we've got vacancies that have come up and now they are being reoffered. So the housing program is moving along very well. We do remain with a significant number of applicants who we are unlikely to be able to accommodate once the program is fully subscribed. And we do continue to receive a small number of new applicants on a regular and rolling basis. And we apply the same eligibility criteria as we have done up until this point. The Whistler's Campground also, the opportunity there is more or less fully occupied. And there are 37 residential occupants and 12 business occupants out there. So a very positive program and positive uptake there. We are doing some improvements on the various interim housing sites, including hydromulching for dust and erosion control, some paving that will take place in the coming weeks, installation of additional staircases, etc. So the idea is to improve the livability and the spaces that people are experiencing there. And then on that topic, we are very pleased to announce that on June 23rd and 24th, we will be doing the official opening and welcoming of our new neighborhoods in Jasper. So on the 23rd, there will be an event at Marmot Meadows, where there will be a barbecue and where there will be an invitation for dignitaries like yourselves to attend, to officially acknowledge that this is a new neighborhood for Jasper. And then on the 24th, we will do the two sites in town. With the same idea to give an opportunity to celebrate the fact that, you know, community members actually have housing and they are creating real community in those locations. On to debris management. Very happy number, 100% of demolition permits have been issued. And we're at over 98% of the debris has actually been removed at this point. So that is very positive. There is the post-removal confirmatory sampling, which is still ongoing. And the issuing of the completion certificates. We continue to see a steady flow of the sampling coming into parks at a rate of about 20 a week, and they are being processed. And we have a significant number, 61 closeout permits have already been issued. A reminder to council and to members of the public that individuals who want to move to the development or the building permit stage of their rebuild do not need to wait until they get the confirmatory sampling in order to submit their application. Those processes can run in parallel, and that can help with that expediting timelines. On the rebuild side of things, Director Sanders is here. Lots of work is still continuing in that area, including a significant number of permits that have been issued. I will not touch further on that as Director Sanders is here if she has additional comments. Social recovery, we are working on the commemoration of the 1 year from the post wildfire. So there are some events that will be organized and planned around that period of time, and further details will be announced in the coming days. We are planning to make use of July 22nd as the official anniversary date. The Pathfinders program continues to find significant success. We have another cohort of Pathfinders that will start training as of tomorrow. That will bring us up to a little over 40 Pathfinders in total. We are also planning on developing a junior Pathfinders program where we will make it available to youth within our community. So the funding for that program has now been fully subscribed. We have found funding support for the full implementation of that program, which is very positive. And then the JRCC, together with Parks Visitor Experience, is working with our Indigenous Relations teams, and there will be a Healing Through Fire event. It will be on July 23rd that will be open to all members of the public. Economic recovery, the good news at the pop-up village is we have mostly solved the generator and electricity noise problems. There is still one lingering issue there, but it is mostly solved, and we are moving to install better servicing connections very shortly. It is already proving to be a vibrant area within our business community. Really good positive reports back from the businesses and good positive foot traffic going through there. So that is quite good. At the interim industrial park, the main line, water, sewer, and gas have been installed. We have the first additional businesses that are going to be installing their trailers in the coming weeks. And then there will be a rolling program over the next few months as the rest of the C-cans get built out and get shipped and then get installed. And we are still working through the contractor laydown process. We have some small details that are still to be worked out and issues that we are addressing together with Parks Canada. We expect to be able to communicate on that very soon. That is more or less the summary of the activities of the JRCC currently. I am happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you for that report, Director Park. Are there questions from councillors? Deputy Mayor Wilson?
Could you explain what hydromulching is and what the benefit of it is?
Certainly. So in all of the interim housing sites, we've had to disturb the soils in the ground. And in many cases, there's actually berms or embankments that are existing that have been heavily disturbed. And those will be susceptible to either erosion or creation of dust if they are not if they're not treated somehow. So hydromulching is essentially a process where we inject seeds of a certain type into the soils. They are specifically designed to grow quickly. And then there is, a surface treatment that will help to maintain and contain the dust and prevent erosion from taking place on those locations.
Yeah, thank you. So has this been looked at in other areas or just the interim housing areas? Because there is, a significant amount of dust and debris blowing up, and there will still be for the foreseeable future in kind of like the interface area of the affected and non-affected areas.
Yeah. So for the interim housing sites, those are sites that we control, and we are covering this through the disaster recovery program to ensure the mitigation takes place there. For the majority of the rest of the sites, essentially the total loss properties, we are working on a communication plan that we will be coming out with shortly to communicate to both residents and those affected properties about dust control measures that they can undertake and what to expect for the coming summer period. We don't have the ability, there's no mechanism that we could use to impose upon individual leaseholders to take the step to do something like hydromulching on their individual leaseholds. We do have a nuisance bylaw that if excessive dust was created, that is something that we could look at from an enforcement perspective, but that would also come with additional challenges and complications. What we are planning at this moment in time is a proactive communication campaign, again, to the general public about how to react to dust and what can be expected, and then informing leaseholders of what their obligations and responsibilities are in terms of maintaining their site if they are in the process between completing the debris removal, but yet not yet starting the construction of the rebuild.
Thank you for that. Other questions, Councillor Hall?
Thank you very much, Mayor Ireland. I live in the 715 zone on Connaught and interim housing, and then the 900 is past me. I'm noticing most people in the areas have bikes, which is great. I'm wondering if that sidewalk, this might be more for administration, but the south sidewalk on Connaught could be officially allowed bikes on it, because what I'm seeing is children, it's a lot of cars parked now on Connaught, and there's a lot of traffic now on Connaught, and living there, I see how fast it can go, and I just worry about a small child going onto the road in between two cars to head to school or head downtown. When I leave my home, I bike on the sidewalk until I get to the lights, and then it turns into a bike path past that. So that's the only concern I'm seeing is that there's a lot of youth cycling from the 900 Connaught to town, and they just zip right onto Connaught Street because that's where they go, and it's just getting busier with more visitors and contractors, and it's my only observation.
So we can take that away and explore the possibility. I believe it is already the case that under a certain age, it is permitted for bicycles to be on the sidewalk. Is that not already part of the provincial legislation? We'll take that one away and come back to it.
If I might just interject. I was of the understanding, perhaps I've been in breach of our own rules, but ever since the start of development of parcel GB, access to the town trail has been blocked, and we have converted that sidewalk to be part of the town trail, which allows cycling. So I think it perhaps just needs to be explained to people that that is now part of the town trail, and bicycles are welcome. Caution is encouraged, so we don't have bicycles running into pedestrians, but like the rest of the town trail along Connaught, I think it is permitted and it has been for a couple of years. Sorry, I will go first to Councillor Demoda and then.
Well, that's good follow.
Just a follow-up, if that's the case, that's great. I wonder if there could be some bike symbols painted on it, just to really encourage and let people know that that's the real speed, that you're probably right.
Councillor Demoda.
Thank you, Worship, and sorry for ending your acknowledgement to me. While we're on the topic, that I was just reminded of a resident and business owner approaching me and making me aware of some safety issues on the northeast end of town, near the new neighborhood there, because there's a lot more parking congestion. Vehicles still turning, waiting to get into the hotels there, and even the turnoff for the Cavell Court. We're finding people passing in the shoulder to get around buses and or other vehicles, and there's people on the other side of the street. There's more human traffic on that side, and I just wanted to make it aware, or at least if it hasn't been brought up to administration's attention, that there are some ongoing issues concerning that. And I thought I'd bring that forward, please, and thank you.
Councillor Waxer.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland, through you to Director Park. You spoke about the possibility of hydro mulching on individual properties if they're causing significant dust issues. How would a resident go about having that process done, and what would be the approximate cost, and finally, would you consider that a possible claimable expense under insurance?
Thank you, Councillor Wexler. So it is a possibility an individual leaseholder can take and may be required to take measures to control dust emanating from their property, of which hydromulching is one option. There's also tackifying treatments that can be applied as an additional option. There are a few different options that could be available. A leaseholder would have to go through the process of identifying a contractor and taking the steps to undertake that work. I cannot provide an estimate of cost at this time. It would be very much site specific and contractor specific. And unfortunately, as with all things, it would be depending entirely on the policy of each leaseholder and what their insurance does and does not cover.
Thank you for that.
Are there any other questions of Director Fark related to the progress update that was delivered? If not, thank you as always, Director Fark. I would look for a motion that council receive the report for information. Councillor Melnick, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 6.2, values to guide the development of Jasper's town plan. That was before us a week ago at committee of the whole and comes forward on recommendation from committee to council. Although my recollection is that there were some opportunities discussed last week for some alterations to some of the wording. And so I would look perhaps to Director Sanders to give us an update as to where we are with respect to what is proposed to be the final wording of the values.
Thank you, Your Worship. We, at this point in time, the motion from committee was recommending that council receive the words as information and then direct administration to incorporate them into our work on the town plan, which will take place in 2026. So we did not come up with new words. The correspondence that you received from the chamber and Tourism Jasper will be very helpful for us to make sure that the words encompass, your words, Mayor Ireland, last week also were about reflecting the visitor economy. Sorry.
Sorry, I didn't know how to start around.
We had a phone go off in the gallery. Okay, so, really good feedback, both from you, your worship, about recognizing the importance of the visitor economy in Jasper. Also good feedback from the Chamber and Tourism Jasper about not losing that aspect of things. So, a week turnaround time when we're just looking for some words that represent the sense of direction that we have that we can use in preparing a town plan next year. We're fine with the words, the 6 words as they are, but we do take the note and take under advisement the feedback received by letters and then also from you folks last week. And then the other notes I just want to acknowledge that we've received are about using the destination stewardship plan and also thinking more robustly about business continuity and economic diversification. So those are all things that need to be incorporated in how we think about a town plan.
Thank you for that. Questions or comments from councillors? Councillor Keller-Grampian.
Thank you, Mayor, and to you to Ms. Sanders. So when we talk about business, then that you would build that out as a pillar within the town plan, is that how you see it?
The way I'm imagining building the plan is around the 6 words. And that those 6 words, it's like a 6-circle Venn diagram, that there aren't going to be distinct pillars per se, but we expect economy to be a very important part of what we see. So we should see economy under many of those words. We should see our social well-being, our ecological well-being under many of those words. Some of them are going to be more prevalent under each of those words. But the point in terms of how I would like to structure the town plan is it fosters integration and thinking in an integrated way so that our organization and our community is not thinking in silos, but is thinking about how we work together on things like economy or ecological well-being or our social well-being. So the words are not standalone things. And I know I'm getting into the minutia of how my mind works when I'm thinking about writing a plan. But the purpose of the exercise was to identify some words, and we may shift them before they form part of the town plan next year. So they're really quite literally a general sense of direction to help point us in a direction as we're crafting the plan and we engage the community again next year.
Councillor DeMola.
I was just gonna say, I like the concept of wheels in general, but, not only physically and conceptually, but visually too. And spokes make them stronger. So I like that whole idea and integrating them, however the plan comes out. I found that buy-in success usually, revolves around that, or rotates, I guess, if you want to use the proper word.
Other councillors? For myself, then, I just want some assurance, and again, referencing the letters that are on our agenda today, items 5.2 and 3, and comments that I had. I mean, I appreciate that we are attempting to capture everything in 6 words. So a challenge in itself. There is nothing specific in any of those 6 about the economic underpinning of our community. But under thriving, for example, we may yet see, for example, wording that says Jasper is a socially and economically thriving community, something like that, to just to show that we have not discounted the importance of the economic base, and similarly under inclusive, and I mentioned this last week, I did not see recognition that we are inclusive of visitors, and yet we absolutely need the visitors to drive the economy, to support our social infrastructure. So if I am to vote today in favor of accepting broad values, I am looking for some assurance that the issues that have been raised are going to be captured in the end document, and that would include in that some reference somewhere, and I haven't figured out where yet, to the destination stewardship plan as one of our substantive founding documents for all this.
Your worship, I can respond to that. Dr. Sanders may have something as well, but just a bit of a process observation here. So while there were some specific documents and specific words presented at committee last week, the intent is to provide some overarching guidance rather than specific language. Because ultimately what this is going to be used to do is it will inform the development of essentially a municipal development plan, which is a statutory document required under provincial law. It will also be what will act as a community plan, which is required under the Canada National Parks Act. So that's a very detailed document where this directional guidance will be used, and there will be plenty of room for very specific inputs, including economy, and some of the details that are here. So council can be comfortable that this is only directional guidance, not specific implementation or specific words that will be directly written into a law per se. And that the correspondence that was received today will also be a part of that. What has the community said overall about the direction that needs to be contained in our community plan? The correspondence that's here, the number of people that engaged over the number of engagements, the direction that council has given, and the engagements that will come when we have a formal document. Adopting a municipal development plan or community plan, there are specific legislative requirements for engagement, and public hearings where we can get into the minutia and the details of the very specific words that would be in there. At this time, this is really just looking for directional guidance from council. All of that work on the details wouldn't get started until sometime in 2026 at the earliest. So council can be assured that you're not setting anything in stone today.
Thank you for that, Mr. Given. Any other questions or comments from councillors? Is there a councillor prepared for a motion or two? Councillor Melton?
Thank you, Your Worship, and based on the commentary by CEO Mr. Given, I would recommendation that council receive the values of belonging, connection, nature, responsible, thriving, and inclusive as information, and that council direct administration to incorporate the values of belonging, connection, nature, responsible, thriving, and inclusive in the creation of Jasper's town plan, fulfilling the requirements of a community plan under the Canadian National Parks Act, and a municipal development plan under the Alberta Municipal Government Act.
Thank you for that. Councillor Melton, do you wish to speak at all to the motion?
Thank you, Your Worship, and I do appreciate the correspondence earlier in the meeting. And again, that those documents will be, I'm sure, included as part of the foundational documents when we get into that point in 2026 of developing our community plan in consultation, of course, with the community in Parks Canada, with our business community and so on. So I'm quite comfortable the direction this is going, and I'm glad that those that correspondence did come in and were included in this this particular meeting's agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Melick. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? I will speak briefly just to say I concur with Councillor Melnick and with administration. This is a starting point or a takeoff point, not a landing point. It gives administration an opportunity to build out a town plan, which is necessary for other purposes, but this will be back before council, and to the same extent that we would now be accepting belonging, connection, nature, responsible, thriving, and inclusive for information. We received the earlier correspondence for information as well, so it's on an equal footing, and we did more than that, I think, with the destination stewardship plan. When it was proposed. So it is a document that we have done more than just received for information. So in that sense, I am comforted, but I'm grateful for the letters we received and the discussion that we've had. So I will be voting in favor of the motion. And if there is no one else wishes to speak, I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. We are now at agenda item 7. We are not long into our meeting, but once we commence with the public hearing, that may take some time. Are there any councillors who would benefit from a brief recess before we commence? All right, I have 2:21. I will call a recess until 2:30, and then we will open the public hearing and we will continue with the public hearing. We're starting through this proposal. Unless there are intervening factors, which is so recess till 2:30. Thank you all. I will call us back into session. It is 2:30 PM, and I will call for order in the gallery, please.
Folks, we're gonna start the meeting again. We're gonna need you to sit down, please.
I will call this a public hearing to order. For all of us, it will be a learning experience. Just for clarity, this public hearing is in order to consider land use policy amendments to increase residential density. We recognize that from the submissions we have received, the written submissions, that other items of interest are likely to be raised by residents, and we accept and welcome that. But we will attempt to focus our efforts on the land use policy amendments which are presented to us in order to reduce residential densities. I will, before we begin, just clarify, I hope, expectations for all on both sides of the table. We will shortly, council will be asked to approve the agenda for the public hearing. The public hearing will be conducted in this fashion. And it is as dictated by section 20 of schedule 2 of our procedure bylaw. So although we have never had occasion to use this section, it is there. And it guides us. For the benefit of council in particular, there are some definitional terms that are important in the context of the public hearing. Adjourn means more like recess, means to put it over. When we adjourn a regular meeting, it closes the meeting. In the context of a public hearing, if we adjourn, we could adjourn to recommence on a later date at another meeting or later in the same meeting. To terminate this public hearing is to close it. That is the other term that is important for this context. So we will at some point need a motion to close the public hearing, after which council is prohibited from receiving or entertaining any other information regarding the subject matter. So when when this matter is closed, cannot receive more input from constituents in any form. That is not just a function of our procedure bylaw, that is part and parcel of the municipal government. We will commence with a short presentation from administration pursuant to Article 20.9 of Schedule B of the procedure bylaw. Members will not ask questions of administration at that point and are not entitled to ask questions of administration until we have heard from all members of the public who wish to speak. Any member of the public is welcome to speak. The duration of speaking time for each member of the public who wishes to address us is 3 minutes. But that is then also subject to any questions that might be asked by councillors, so that time could be extended, but initially limit yourselves to 3 minutes each. And I think that covers most of what I have to say. I will say that there is a duty on either the mayor or the CAO, so I will assume that duty to confirm to the public that council has received a total of 9 written submissions with respect to the matter. As I understand it now, those submissions are available on our website under the, no, they are not. Okay. We have paper copies of those. All of council has them, and I don't intend to read through them all, but Mr. Given, go ahead.
Your worship, I was just going to say, they will be a matter of public record, and so they will be attached to the minutes of the public hearing. Council members have been provided them in advance electronically. They will be available to the general public as a matter of the record of the public hearing.
And so I want to assure those members of the public who did submit letters, all of council has received those written submissions and are aware of them. There is a duty under our bylaw that the mayor or CAO inform council of the written submissions and the numbers in favor of or opposed to the matter. I am unable to do that. I've read the letters, but it is not necessarily clear whether they are in favor or opposed. They raise different subject matters, express concerns about matters, but do not clearly indicate whether they are in favor of a bylaw or, pardon me, a policy amendment or opposed to it. So I'm unable to take that further than that. So I will begin then with council. You have in our agenda a proposed sub-agenda for this public hearing. Are there any additions, deletions, or other changes to be made to the public hearing agenda for today's meeting? If there are none, I would look for a motion that council approve the agenda for the public hearing of June 17th, 2025 as presented. Councillor Waxer, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. We will begin then with the presentation from administration. I look to, I presume, Director Sanders for that.
Yes, thank you, your worship. Good afternoon, your worship, members of council, administration, and the gallery. And my colleague, Michael Borland, one of our town planners, he's on Zoom and he is operating our slide deck. Michael will speak, as well as Leanne Pelche beside me, who's our housing manager. And we have a solid amount of information that we will go through rather quickly, recognizing that you will be able to ask us questions. So to start, I'll just remind council in the gallery that this public hearing is not under the requirements of Part 17 of the Municipal Government Act. We are practicing having a public hearing under Part 17 of the Municipal Government Act. So it is in the spirit of, so we'll practice this as we talk about proposed possible amendments to the town of Jasper land use policy. I'll also pause to let council know that the advertisement for this public hearing took place both on the project webpage on Engage Jasper, also via email to mailing lists to residents who have subscribed to the mail list on Engage Jasper. There were also social media posts on the municipal Facebook and Instagram accounts. Ads were also in the digital version of the Jasper Local, and posters were also placed around town in public spaces. And I'd also like to note that Parks Canada has the authority to change the town of Jasper land use policy. And while work is progressing to transfer that authority to the municipality, administration has taken the initiative with council's blessing to engage with Jasperites on this question. How do we welcome more homes to Jasper? We continue to work with our parks colleagues, but I want to acknowledge that we do not have the authority to make these changes, but we can, through you, council, you can make a recommendation to the superintendent. And a last comment before I continue is, while we have worked hard on these proposals as administration, we are clear as an administration that whatever you choose as council is the right way to move forward. So while we recognize a challenge in Jasper, the housing challenge, and we have put together our professional recommendation in 15 proposals, your work is to take our advice into consideration along with the community's advice and sentiments that you'll receive today in this public hearing. And whether the people are in the gallery that you hear from or in writing, that's your work to do. So we hand this over to you. You will make a decision, and our work will shift from making proposals to you to implementing your decisions. So a quick overview of the territory myself and Leanne and Michael will cover is just to reiterate a little bit of the purpose, our housing situation, the engagement approach, who we heard from, what we heard in general, and then the 15 recommended policy changes. And when we present those, we're going to present those with the idea and then just a general sentiment of what the people we engaged with had to say about those 15 proposals. So when it comes to the purpose of a public hearing, so just generally, it's required under the Municipal Government Act. If we had planning and development authorities, you would be required to have a public hearing. And so we're practicing. But really what a public hearing is an opportunity for administration very transparently to present to you a proposal, but also for residents to speak directly to council and then council for you to hear directly from residents. So all of us together, all of us over here, residents and administration, will provide you with robust information for your subsequent deliberation and decision making. So with this, I will introduce Leanne Pelche, our housing manager, to speak about our housing situation.
Thank you, Director Sanders. We know that our current housing situation is dire. The 2022 housing gap analysis cited a deficit of 759 units to house both the year-round and seasonal population based on a household size of 3. And the 2024 wildfire resulted in the loss of an additional, at minimum, 617 units. In the community, a housing shortage has been recognized for decades, but we have so far been unsuccessful in addressing it. One indicator of a deficient housing market is a 0% vacancy rate. Jasper's vacancy rate has been at or near 0% for decades, meaning renters have limited options and reduced affordability in housing. Along with the recent wildfire, other Jasper-specific factors affect housing availability and affordability. Jasper's unique location within a national park means the town boundary is fixed in legislation. This protects the surrounding ecosystem, but limits opportunities for residential growth. This requires creative and efficient housing solutions within the existing footprint. Expanding the boundary would require an amendment to the Canada National Parks Act, an act of Parliament. This should not be the focus of addressing the housing shortage, as it is inefficient and it would be very costly to build new infrastructure to support new development areas. Our tourism economy drives a strong demand for affordable seasonal housing for staff. However, what's available is predominantly high cost and permanent residences. Significant increases in rental and purchase prices for homes are misaligned with Jasper's living wage of $31 an hour. First-time buyers tend to be excluded, and this intensifies pressure on the rental sector. Renters therefore find themselves in unaffordable, inadequate, and unsuitable housing. Lastly, the development of housing is regulated by Parks Canada's Town of Jasper land use policy. Some aspects of the current policy restrict the development of housing. Changes to the policy could increase housing density by simply making more housing allowed, as well as improving the financial viability of housing projects, for everything from a simple accessory dwelling unit to a complicated apartment building. Recognizing the need to address the current housing situation, and with available funding from CMHC, we applied for and were successful in securing $9.4 million to work on our Housing Action Plan's 8 initiatives through the CMHC's Housing Accelerator Fund. To receive funding, initiatives had to result in a housing growth target rate increase of at least 10%, focus on missing middle and affordable housing, and be bold, resulting in long-lasting systemic change to policy and processes. The initiatives outlined in our Housing Action Plan follow Housing Accelerator Fund best practice, as they have shown to be successful when implemented in other communities across Canada. Here today, we are addressing 2 of our half initiatives, both proven levers local governments have to move the needle on housing.
So community engagement is a vital part of how the community of Jasper will decide how it wishes to address the housing situation. And while the Housing Action Plan initiatives suggest a course of action to address the housing challenge, a community-based discussion and decision are needed. And community engagement took place from April to June and was focused on the first 2 Housing Action Plan actions. So that was to update the land use policy to incent development and promote density, and to explore changes to parking requirements tied to housing. And each time we engaged, and even today with these proposals in front of you, we also engaged about town values to help us keep a sense of direction while exploring density and parking. And the timeline was aggressive for 2 reasons. One was actually 3 reasons. One is to be responsive to Jasper's housing challenge that has been intensified as a result of the wildfire. Most buildings that were destroyed were homes. Second reason is to be responsive as Jasperites are rebuilding from the wildfire. And 3, to give this particular council a chance to consider how to address our housing situation before the summer break and before the election on October 20th. So in April, our engagement focused on 2 questions. What values guide us through good and hard times? And what do you think about Jasper's housing situation? And engagement in this phase involved workshops. So early engagement is about ideas mixing and mingling among Jasperites. So workshops were the methodology that we used. 80 adult Jasperites spent upwards of 2 hours each working on these questions, and an additional group of youth also participated. In May, we shifted the questions. So we had draft town values. So we asked, how do those resonate with you? But then we asked an explicit question about how and where do we welcome more homes in Jasper? And after working on the values, 65 adult Jasperites spent upward of 2 hours each working on these questions. And an additional group of youth, again, also participated, as well as 22 people completed an online survey in the second phase. In June, engagement shifted from workshops, which generate ideas, to an open house to get feedback on the ideas from the workshops. And we had two questions again. How do the updated town values resonate with you? And then since there were 15 tangible proposals, we asked, how comfortable are you with each of the 15 potential policy changes related to residential density and parking? 78 people attended the in-person open houses. 3 attended the online open house. 86 people completed the new online survey. And our team connected also with over 154 people at the community summer celebration on June 8th. And now we will shift to information about who we heard from in May and June. And this is Michael now.
Thanks, Beth. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I just want to do a quick audio check. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome, thank you. Over the next few slides, I'll highlight who we heard from. The bar charts represent those who registered for workshops in May and completed surveys in May and June. Home ownership. 2/3 of people are homeowners and under a third rent their homes. Housing types. Nearly 40% of people live in single detached homes, while 14% live in row houses and apartments. Employment. Almost 2/3 of people have full-time employment, while 18% of people are retired. Years lived in Jasper. More than half of the people have lived in Jasper for over 15 years. Almost a quarter of people have lived in Jasper for 5 to 15 years. Gender. Almost 2/3 of people identify as female and 1/3 as male. Age. Almost 3/4 of people are between the ages of 25 and 64, while 18% are seniors. Groups. We heard from a few people who identify as Indigenous peoples, LGBTQ2+, persons with disabilities, or newcomers. In April, we heard about housing concerns and needs. Some of the housing concerns were the availability and affordability of housing, high cost of living, and private home accommodations within secondary suites. A few housing needs were fewer development restrictions, providing housing options for different stages of life, and creating balanced densification. In May, we heard that across most of Jasper, accessory dwelling units and multi-unit dwellings are welcomed. We also heard support and non-support for increasing the height of apartment buildings and removing parking minimums for new residential development. What we heard in June is on the slides to come. 87% of people who we heard from in June agree that the municipality of Jasper should take action to enable and encourage more housing to be built for Jasperites. This includes those who attended the June open houses, completed the survey, and attended the community summer celebration. I'll now pass it back to Beth to talk about municipal authority.
Well, that was a big question that 80%, 87% of the people we connected with say there's a role for the municipality to take. There's also a limit to the role the municipality can take. So while in the fall of 2024, Bill C-76 to enable the transfer of planning and development authority from Parks Canada, the municipality occurred, it was the very beginning of the process. Next, we need to have a community plan or a town plan. We need a land use bylaw, and depending on the timing, we will have our own to set up, or we will use the existing documents that Parks will transfer over to us, which is what happened with the town of Banff. But for now, we're working closely with our Parks colleagues, and the coming transfer and that you don't have the authority does not negate at all that council has a role as elected representatives for the community of Jasper, and the municipality can engage with the community and make decisions about the actions it recommends to Parks Canada about amendments to land use policy. So now to the proposed policy changes. So there are 15 proposed policy changes. These were all public a couple weeks ago with the open houses. And for reference, they're numbered here from 1 to 15 in our engagement work, but in your package, council, you're also going to see A to O. So let us know if you need any clarity. But all said and done. There are 15 and they are organized around 3 objectives. The first objective is to simplify land use policy so it's easier for everyone to use. The second is to provide more types of housing in Jasper. And the third is to increase the number of homes. And as we proceed with each of the proposals, the pie chart information, just so you know when it's going to say how many people or what percentage of people are comfortable, uncomfortable, is from the open house and the survey. So it's not all Jasperites, it's just simply the open house and the survey. So the first proposal is to combine similar residential districts, and the proposal here is to shift from 9 to 4 and then create 1 new district to make a total of 5. And the purpose of this change, very simply, is to make the land use policy easier for all to use. And just over a half of respondents were comfortable or very comfortable with this proposal. The second proposal is to create general policies for accessory buildings. So the proposal here is to create consistent and clear policies for accessory buildings across all residential districts. So that means garages, sheds, accessory dwelling units. And the purpose of this change is to make the land use policy easier to use for all users. Michael is going to take the microphone here.
Perfect. Thanks, Beth. Proposal 3 is permit secondary suites in the multi-unit small lot dwelling district R3A. The proposal here is to allow 1 and 2 unit dwellings in the R3A district to have secondary suites within them. These homeowners will then have the opportunity to provide different housing types. The purpose of this change is to provide more types of housing. Number 4 is to permit garden and garage suites in more residential districts. Specifically, adding garden and garage suites as permitted uses in the Cabin Creek West District will allow additional housing types. While this may be challenging on some Cabin Creek properties, innovative site design may allow space for garden and garage suites. The purpose of this change is to provide for more types of housing. Number 5 is to allow multi-unit dwellings in more residential districts. A multi-unit dwelling is a building containing 3 to 6 dwelling units. Adding this type of housing to more residential districts supports providing different housing types for people at different stages of life. This change involves more density without changing the overall feel of the neighborhood. The purpose of this change is to provide for more types of housing. Number 6 is to allow row houses along the ground floor of apartment buildings. To support people-friendly streetscapes, this proposal allows an apartment building to have townhomes with individual entrances along the ground level. The purpose of this change is to provide for more types of housing. And I'll pass it to Leanne now.
Recommendation 7G considers removing minimum parking requirements for new residential development. This allows additional land to be used for housing, allows property owners the freedom to decide how much parking they need, can lower construction costs, and it also encourages other modes of transportation, walking, biking, and transit use. The purpose of this change is to increase the number of homes in Jasper. We recognize that not requiring parking spaces is a cultural shift for Jasper. If council is interested in pursuing this option, we recommend a residential community parking strategy. Recommendation 8H is to develop policy for bike parking as part of multi-unit dwellings and apartments. The creation of well-designed areas for bike parking will provide more appropriate parking for seasonal or year-round use and recognizes Jasper's high bike use. This could reduce the number of cars at residential developments, decreasing the number of car parking spaces required, resulting in increasing the number of homes in Jasper. Recommendation 9I increases the maximum site coverage for garage and garden suites. The current site coverage varies across residential districts from 10, 15, 18, and 20%, and 100 to 250 square meters. Some of these policies have conflicting requirements. A standard site coverage of 20% for garden and garage suites will create accessory dwelling units with more habitable spaces and make them practical housing options for Jasperites. The purpose of this change is to increase the number of homes in Jasper. This change will also simplify the land use policy, making it easier for all users. Recommendation 10J is to allow one garage suite and one garden suite per primary dwelling. This will allow leaseholders without a secondary suite to accommodate 2 accessory dwelling units. The purpose of this change is to increase the number of homes in Jasper. Recommendation 11K increases the maximum eave-line height of multi-unit dwellings in the R3A district. The existing policy allows 6 primary dwelling units, but the regulations make it difficult to construct to the allowable 6. The change will create more units and more habitable space in those units. The purpose of this is to increase the number of homes in Jasper. In recommendation 12L, we propose to increase the height of apartment buildings in the R3B district to 4 stories. Knowing we have limited land available for development, some of the undeveloped lands in Jasper are in the R3B district. Increasing the height from 3 to 4 stories allows for the most efficient use of finite land, overall increasing the number of homes in Jasper. Recommendation 13M refers to the creation of a new residential district for 6-story apartment buildings. Creating a new residential district for 6-story apartment buildings maximizes the number of future homes on the remaining undeveloped lands in town. And just to add for clarity that the proposed locations are from community feedback, and they are where the current RCMP detachment is located, and at the east end of town, north of the Forest Park Hotel, where the current interim housing is located. Potential development will not take place for at least several years, if ever, until after a new RCMP detachment is constructed and the old one demolished, and until there is no further need for interim housing at the east end of town. The purpose of this change is to increase the number of homes in Jasper. Recommendation 14N, allowing 3 stories of residential housing above first-floor commercial buildings, is an efficient use of finite land and existing municipal services. It also provides for a vibrant downtown year-round. The purpose of this change is to increase the number of homes in Jasper. 15O, we propose changing 1-unit dwellings from a permitted to a discretionary use class. This change allows Jasper to gradually increase density as lots are redeveloped over time. This would not apply to homes destroyed by natural disaster. Redevelopment would be gradual. For example, if someone chooses to tear down a 1-unit home, we are signaling that the desired replacement of that home should be with more than 1 unit. However, as a discretionary use, a single-unit home does remain an option, just not the default expectation. The purpose of this change is to increase the number of homes in Jasper.
So your worship and council, that is a speedy but lengthy overview of the 15 proposed amendments to the town of Jasper land use policy from municipal administration. In the community engagement, and as you saw with the proposed changes we've just presented, there is support for many changes and concern with 2 particular topics, parking and height. So before you proceed with hearing from others in the gallery, I know that you have the written representations from folks that were not able to attend today. And a note on process. You're going to hear from residents, and then you're going to ask residents and administration questions. If at any time you would like a slide pulled up on the screen, Michael is ready to do that for you. And I will leave that as the conclusion of our presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Sanders, and all members of administration who were part of that presentation, appreciated by council and both by the gallery and others watching. So we will turn now to the public engagements session of this. I will just ask members of the gallery to come forward if they wish to speak. There was an opportunity to pre-register. I think no one took advantage of that opportunity. Had they done so, I would have invited those individuals first, but otherwise I can do it randomly. Could I have a show of hands of how many might be interested in presenting? I see only one. Well, that makes it quite easy for now. Others may gain courage as we go ahead. You wish to come and serve and present your name, perhaps spelling, so we can get it right on the record. And if you are representing a group other than individually, you could let us know that. And I will, in a moment, start a clock. I will have to keep everybody to the 3-minute limit that I referenced earlier. So the floor is yours, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you, your worship and council and the various people that are representing you. I represent Decor Hotels. I'm the vice president of Decor Hotels, who I've worked with for 26 years in Jasper. We probably represent about 120 to 130 people that live and are part of an essential, vibrant part of the community. A town that has restrictive outer boundaries in order to modernize, afford to modernize, and not make taxation unaffordable, only has one choice. That's go up and be creative. So we applaud these great ideas, but with great ideas also come the pitfalls of those great ideas, that there has to be solutions. Problems that come with these could be, the Airbnb situation. Everyone wants to rent Airbnb, you make a lot of money doing it, but probably represents 400 to 500 units or beds. And if we're going to build up the town and put more people in there, what is keeping this problem from continuing where we have 0% occupancy? Because everyone goes, hey, we can build Airbnb and we'll make lots of money, we'll pay down the mortgages, this will be great. So that's one of the problems. The other problem is that the town, parking is the biggest one. How are you gonna go up without parking I don't know what the solution is. Because in Edmonton, they're doing the same thing that you guys are doing in a very fast rate. I can't sometimes park in front of my house and I have to go 3 or 4 blocks, and I have my young nephews and I have groceries and it's a big push and it's very, very difficult. You guys have to go up, you have to be creative, but how are you gonna do it with parking? I don't know that. The Airbnb, I go back to that, and I guess one of the reasons is because of the mill rate. They're a business just like us in hotels. They don't pay the 5-to-1 mill rate. Whether there's 1 or 100, they should pay that fair amount. The rental affordability is out of hand in this town. We supplement all of our workers by half to anything that's external that we don't own. We do not make profit on any houses that we put staff on. We charge them a certain rate and we don't make money. We actually lose money, which is fine.
30 seconds.
Oh, sorry. Anyways, we have to bring the prices down. We have to build more, and we've got to figure out the rental rates. So, sorry, that was very quick, and I know I'm out of my time, but you guys have to build to afford. And if you don't, then our taxations are gonna go up and people are gonna freak out. So I don't know what you're gonna do, but those things that we brought up are very concerning to us, because for years, there hasn't been anywhere to put people. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. If you could remain, sorry. Thank you. If you could just remain in case there are questions from councillors. And you indicated that you were representing Decor Hotels.
Yes, it represents
I did not
130.
catch your name.
Isaac Goble, sorry. I'm the vice president. I thought, sorry, I missed the name. Little on the nervous side on public speaking.
Quite all right, sir. Are there questions from the councillors with respect to the presentation? Deputy Mayor Wilson?
Just a question regarding the parking. The developer could still have parking on property. So if parking is needed or desired by an individual or parking or developer, they do still have the opportunity to put as many parking stalls on their property as possible. And I understand many won't. But then I'd just like to correct you though, PHAs do pay the 5-to-1 on the.
The Airbnbs do?
Yeah.
Okay, well, then I'm
Yeah,
being corrected.
yeah.
We never knew that. We were under the understanding that wasn't the case.
Just for the parcel of their house that they were be using for commercial purposes.
And they pay the fair taxation based on the occupancy or how much they sell rooms per year.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm wondering.
I
All right,
apologize,
I'm
we're
correct.
having a little bit of a side discussion, but that they pay at the 5-to-1 rate,
Okay,
but based on assessed value rather than income.
okay. So that would be the difference between the hotels and them. Can I make a comment quickly on the parking? A 50 by 100, you realize that unless you're using the land, which you need to build up to put more people, only fits 2 in the front and maybe 2 in the back with a garage. So now if you're putting a whole bunch of people and they're not all gonna ride bicycles to go to Costco or get bulk food, because it's very inexpensive here, you're already gonna have more pressure, more cars, which then impedes the neighbor who's living with his family. And that's what's happening in Edmonton. They just built. They had 2 skinny homes, and now Edmonton allows the garage to be a home. Where do they park? There is no park. But whether you guys do underground or above, you have to think of the parking. It is a huge issue, but you need the density. Like this has been 0% occupancy. I would say even before 214. It's been a really, really hard goal. And, you know, like even for businesses or people to actually have to pay, like we don't pay that well here and our expenses are insane. And then at the end of the day, like businesses, everyone thinks, oh, hotels make so much money. We don't. But at the end of the day, we have to supplement just to keep our people. And to supplement half of a rental property is insane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there another member of the gallery? For sure. Oh, I'm sorry, did you have a question?
Not a question, just comment. Just a clarification.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just because Isaac, thank you for the information. And just for a little bit of clarity too. This council in particular, since the beginning of it, has gone forward to Alberta municipalities and presented a resolution on advocating for rent controls or stricter regulations in the province. And it is a provincial mandate and out of our control. And to our surprise, it came with quite a bit of friction from more of the rural areas of Alberta, even with support from a lot of members of the Calgary Council. So it's something that we've been strongly advocating and supporting at higher levels. It's still out of our control when it comes to rental. And you can be assured that this council has been fighting for that.
Thank you.
I've been here for 60 years. Everybody knows that.
Newcomer.
Because not everybody knows you.
Why?
Could you
Everybody
please just-
knows Mr. Evans.
Please just identify yourself for the record. So-
Everybody talks all the chances about the parking, about the second story on the top of the garage. But everybody's missing the insurance. Everybody's underinsured. Everybody is not gonna be able to rebuild what we've been talking about. A second story on the top of the garage and more bedrooms, more everything. But from what I hear in town, 90% of the people, they're underinsured. So how can we build if everybody underinsured by 100%. We cannot rebuild, even myself. Own 20 properties, I still cannot rebuild. So the governments, they should try to do something. Mr. Rich Ireland should be get to the government and get help from the government, or not only for me, I'm not talking for me, I'm talking everybody needs help. Because from what I hear, 90% of the people, they're underinsured. I'm underinsured by $5 million. Do I have 5 million? No, I don't have 5 million because I have been too nice to the people. I know you're not gonna like that, what I'm saying, but that's the truth. I've been too nice, even the JKM apartment. We charge for 2-bedroom, 1,500. I'm getting almost. I mean, somebody have to recognize the people in this town is gonna need help. We can talk about the census, we can talk about the parking. And another thing I would appreciate if all of us look the back alleys on the business. The back alleys has to be cleaned up. We cannot allow people, even on my buildings or everywhere else, to go and put a garbage in the back. We gotta clean up, we gotta even do some landscaping. Jasper needs landscaping to be, if you notice, the L&W is nothing but flowers.
30 seconds.
Okay. I have never been in trouble, and I'm not saying I'm in trouble because I'm too proud to say that. And I will never ask for a charity, but I've been proud. But at least can we get some help to rebuild, even pyramids, even anything. Just make it a little bit easier.
Thank you. Thank you, and for the record, we all do know you, but for those who
Well,
can't see you, it's
I'm
Mr.
very-
Gonzalez. Thank you for your presentation.
Well, the worst part is now I have to put up with my wife 24 hours. Oh, thank you.
Before you leave, Laos, if you can just wait there, there may be questions. I wanted to just, please have a seat. I just wanted to make one comment about your presentation. And that it is well recognized that just because the rules may change, I mean, even if we did accept the proposed amendments, there is little expectation that development will occur rapidly. This is something that will unfold over decades. You're absolutely right that even those with guaranteed replacement insurance are not insured to build structures that weren't there before. So they will be, in most cases, I think, for individual homeowners required to replace pretty much what they have. And then for those who are underinsured, it will be even more challenging. So we do not anticipate that even if the changes are made, the town will see quick change to higher density. It will unfold over a very long period, but at least it will provide opportunities for densification for those who have the means and the desire to do so. But I appreciate that point. It's well made. There are others who are underinsured, and it's very sad to hear you express your own challenges with that. But thank you very much for coming forward and sharing with us.
I'm still very proud to be in Jasper.
Are there questions for Mr. Blockus while he's here? Councillor Hall?
Thank you very much. No questions. I just wanted to thank you for coming today in your presentation. You are a kind man. I'm not sure, you probably remember, you were my landlord for about 2.5 years at a small store that we opened called Freewheel Street.
You landlord?
You are a landlord for, it was a 5-year lease. We were in it for 2.5 years. The business struggled. I came to see you and you gave me 2 months for free in rent. I want to publicly thank you. I have an opportunity right now. And we were able to find someone to take over our lease. So I just wanted to acknowledge your presentation and to acknowledge the fact that you are a kind man, and I do know that.
Where are you?
You're no longer my landlord, and our business is closed, but you were my landlord for about 2.5 years in your Patricia center on the bottom right-hand side. We were a little clothing store, and then PharmaSave took over our lease, but you graciously gave us 2 months for free to find a new leaseholder. So thank
So I
you.
did something right. Thank you. All good?
Thank you, Mr. Blaus.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold.
Anybody else wish to present?
Goodbye, guys. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Councillor Demota, I'm looking at the gallery, but go ahead. I did see a hand up there, so I see now 2 hands. So the back row first, and as you make, I can't really see back there behind Mr. Clevel, but there. And sorry, just have a seat, Councillor Demota. Do you have a comment? No. All right, again, please state your name for the record. If you are representing someone more than yourself, let us know, but otherwise.
Hi, I'm
George,
Kelly Thomas. I'm not representing anybody other than I'm a member of the community. And I just have a couple of concerns that I want to voice. One is, this is the first that I've known of this process. So I guess in that I'm not the only one. And when I add the numbers up for the input, sorry, I'm not great at math, so it could have been incorrect. It's not that many, really, for a community of this size. Where was it? I got 223 in person and 133 online. That's not many. And I appreciate you guys as councillors doing everything that you do to represent the community, but I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for more input from the community. That's number one. The second thing I want to mention briefly is I hear that this is a long-term vision, and if it's a long-term vision, then parking. People have talked about it before. Why isn't it, if there's long-term high-rise buildings going to be built, that the bottom 2 floors or 3 floors are parking? Dig down, provide parking. That's what happens in cities. It would be insane not to do that. So that would be a consideration of providing parking, unless we're not for some reason allowed to do that. Underground parking, I don't know what it is in the park. But that's my concern. The other concern, I've got a few concerns, obviously. The last concern I'll mention is on developing homes and accommodation. All of this is about accommodation and the housing shortage in Jasper, the whole thing, right? This will address housing needs, this will address housing needs, this will address housing needs. Great. But you've got to look beyond just the housing needs and say, well, what does that have an impact on town? And really, when do we really need more housing? It's in the summer, mainly, a little bit in the winter time. Maybe the shoulder seasons are getting a little bit busier, but is there an opportunity for temporary long-term housing? I don't know. It's just, I've got a lot of questions. That's all. I don't even need 30 more seconds for 30.
You were down to 20. You were down to 20, but I didn't have to call. I could tell you were winding up.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Thomas, for those submissions. Are there questions from councillors? Could I just ask you, You gave the numbers, I too was trying to.
Yeah.
keep them. I didn't distinguish between in-person and online, I had 488, is that?
I don't think I included the 154 that were because it wasn't clear to me. In what capacity were they engaged? It was a connection, and to me, a connection could be a handshake or a sit down and these are all the questions we have for you. So that was also another question I had, what was that part of the process?
Thank you, appreciate that. Before you leave, Councillor Demoted, did you have a question?
Yeah, it's more for administration than anything. I remember a few years ago, we had a president.
Councillor Demoted. Questions to administration.
Right after.
Yeah, they will come after we hear from the public. Thank you. You were safe. For you.
Very well said.
Hello,
Come forward.
neighbor.
You still have to identify yourself.
I'm Dave Nielsen. I'm retired. I was property manager for 22 years in Jasper.
Have a seat.
I'm here to speak for renters. Because I speak to a lot of them still about
Is
the
the mic-
cost. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's good.
Anyway,
Thank you.
well, you probably could hear me anyway. My voice is quite loud. Yes, people still come to me about mostly the cost of rents in Jasper. Some of them have increased exponentially. And it isn't just a shortage of housing, it's mostly the increases of rent and the affordability. So I think personally, we need to increase the number of multi-housing, well, dwellings, let's say apartments. 3 stories sounds really good to me. And also accommodations in R1 homes. But there should be some restrictions there. I mean, in our home, we do rent through booking.com. And it's been lucrative, but I think if people are building new homes or applying for secondary suite, there should be some sort of limit as to who they can rent to. You know, I mean, we've actually gotten out of the tourist accommodation this year, and we have some folks in our suite who lost their home. And we felt that was the right thing to do, but now we're going to stay out of the tourist accommodation suite simply because we're getting too damned old. And that's all I have to say. So my issue would be increase the rental accommodations, because a lot of people cannot afford to buy a home regardless of what, because of the costs and because of the fact that their incomes are not near high enough. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nielsen. Thank you, Mr. Nielsen. If you could just
No questions?
wait 1 moment and see whether there are questions from councillors. It would appear not.
Good.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your submission.
Yes.
We spell. Spell. Please come forward.
Not too bad.
Hi, thank you. My name is Wendy Nevin. I'm just here. I just have a couple of questions. A lot of my questions got answered by your presentation. So thank you very much. And brought up by other people. I had to write it down so I started to forget. I echo the concerns about parking. That really jumped out at me. I also really echo the concerns about what will stop people who, especially with the garden suites and the secondary suites in the garage, that they're not just going to turn into more Airbnbs. So those are my 2 big concerns. But what I didn't hear much about, I alluded to it a little bit about that these are just recommendations that will go forward to Parks Canada. So one of my concerns is we're all getting uptight and worried about something that potentially won't get put forward in the future. And I just wonder, not maybe right now, but I would be curious to know more information about how that process works. Like, how does this go through Parks Canada, and how much weight does all of this hold with them? And the other thing I didn't hear anything about is our infrastructure in our town. So if we increase all this housing, does our sewage treatment plant, can it accommodate it? Our water, and I live in a neighborhood with super limited street size already, and it's super congested. So if we're adding all of those extra suites, and especially with no extra parking, we're gonna live in a parking lot. So I just wonder if there's gonna be extra tax costs down the road in the future to expand some of those squishy places in town where we've got small streets, and do we have enough sewage? And that is it for me, thanks.
Thank you very much for those submissions, and obviously you were directing those questions towards administration, but I will tell you that they're not entitled to engage right now, but when we get to that stage, if not others, I will ask those very questions of administration. So
Okay, thank you.
yeah, just
Right.
stay in the room, and we will get to that, and I will invite questions from other councillors. And I see no hands, so thank you, Ms. Niven, for that, and we will ask those other questions eventually and invite forward our next speakers.
Thank you for having this today. My name is Shelley Coble. I'm a resident as well as a downtown business operator. Earlier when we were talking about values and the words that we were using, we talked about circles versus silos. And I'm finding this housing conversation is a silo. We're not talking, and parking's coming into it, but we're not talking about our industrial space. And our downtown space, it's, forget what number that was. So you're advocating for 1 level of commercial and 3 levels of housing. So we already have a commercial cap in our community. And if we're going to increase our housing density, which means our population density is going to skyrocket, we need to look at industrial and commercial development. They can't not be considered in a housing plan. So I really champion you to consider business and the industry when you're making a housing plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Most succinct yet?
Yes.
Much appreciated. Questions from councillors? Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I would just get a little more clarity on the commercial development, specifically in Sand Right Industrial Park, or just expansion in general of commercial in the downtown core as well.
Thank you, Councillor Melnick. I advocate for industrial and downtown commercial core. There's no reason why we can't have 2 levels of, I know we can already, but the graphic on the plan shows 1 level of commercial, 3 levels of housing. That I would advocate that you would have that adaptable. And also, do we want 4 levels of building in a downtown core when people are coming here to look at the mountains? So that's a big concern. And also, developing downtown would allow more businesses to develop to meet the needs of the growing population. I would advocate for another level dedicated to commercial development, whether it's offices or services or that type of business, or hotels, hotel space. Does that answer your question, Councillor Melnick?
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Questions from other councillors? Deputy Mayor Wilson.
Not a question, and hopefully not kind of in opposition to the protocol, but I don't think we are opposed to that. We're definitely been a council that would like to advocate for the commercial cap and expand commercial opportunity. But that, yes, I do agree that this is it should be with our and I think will be with our community plan. But I think this is just trying to make, not small gains, but small to medium wins. Well, also, I think council and next council will work towards commercial cap and sorting out our challenges with the SPLOC as well.
And the SBLOC, when we lost the residential trailer parking, that ties in with our parking situation. Most people have secondary vehicles or whatever they put in the commercial or the industrial park parking. So we've been taking away and nothing is growing. So we're advocating land be allocated for new apartment buildings, but we need to advocate for land for industrial use as well. So thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Just for clarity, freely, you had an opening phrase, siloed versus circular?
Surplus, yeah. Well, I think that was Councillor Demoda talked about the spoke in the wheel. I'm not sure what Director Saunders' language was, but
Understood.
Yeah.
And we are a small community. Everything is interconnected. Appreciate that observation. As Deputy Mayor Wilson said, sometimes we have to take little bites at a time and help down the whole thing, but I
This
do
is a
recognize that there is a broader picture. So thank you for bringing that forward.
thank you, Mayor Raymond.
I invite others, please come forward.
Sheila Couture.
Good.
I haven't heard anybody mention anything about busing from Hinton to Jasper for workers or for employees. Is that being considered at all?
It is. It is, and I'll come back to that when we get to
Okay,
your questions, but
and that's all.
that's it.
It is.
No.
Let's see, employees.
I won't engage administration at this time, and I might come back to them, but we authorized an RFP recently for a contractor to start. Yeah, I'm addressing your question, to start a bus service to connect displaced residents both in Hinton and at Marmot Meadows. So I'm not sure where that contract is at this stage, and when that might start up, but it hasn't been a topic today, but it has been a topic in the past. And we received a grant from provincial government to fund that connectedness so that people outside the community can still have a connection here through transit, specific to displaced residents. So it is proceeding. I can't tell you at the moment when we might see those buses actually on the roads, but it is coming soon.
Thank you.
Anything else? Ms. Couture? No, all right. Thank you very much for your submission. I look for the next hand. I see none. I don't want to deny anyone an opportunity. Nor do I want to run an auction. But I am going to say that it appears that we have exhausted the gallery and have received the submissions that we can expect, and I thank all of you for that, as I've sorted 7 speakers, and we received 9 written submissions, which would also factor into council's deliberation, as will any further questions that councillors may have. So at this stage, keeping with our process, I open it to councillors to direct any questions they wish to administration, either arising from their own thoughts based on the earlier presentation, or to reflect the questions that we have received from members of the public who engaged in the public hearing. So, councillors, questions for administration? Deputy Mayor Wilson.
Yeah, question for administration, just to see how kind of aligned or unaligned we are with the rest of the country. I know a lot of these changes or suggestions are fairly Jasper specific, but on the grand kind of scheme of things, are these similar zoning changes that are happening across our country? Or are we kind of like flying in the face of like what's happening out there?
Your worship, we are not doing anything that. Your worship, we are not doing anything that has not been thoroughly researched for results. Particularly through the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation and the HAF funding. They have been trying several of these, like the action plans that we have, and one of which is decoupling or separating the parking requirement from the number of units, and then also just simplifying the land use bylaw or policy in our case to remove barriers to housing even happening. There's so much other than what a municipality has to do to enable housing, like as one of our presenters said, I mean, it might be insurance, it might be money, it might be cash flow, it might be the availability of land, it might be people's interest in developing something, but at the end of the day, when somebody wants to hit go, if our land use policy restricts it, then it's a non-starter. So one of the significant levers that municipalities have as government, so not quite in our case because of our relationship with Parks Canada, but at a local level, a land use policy in our context is a very important lever to remove barriers from additional homes being created once all those other things happen. Parking is a really tricky situation, as I've mentioned it to many residents in the engagement. Is since we got cars post-war and since we designed our communities around cars, we've almost privileged parking for cars than homes for people. So it's a really tricky trade-off because of course we want to have cars. I have a car. I need my car when I go on adventures or back and forth to the city. So I recognize that I need a car, and we all do, but at the same time, we have very clear examples in Jasper where there's more land being used for parking than there is for housing. So at the very least, we need to revisit how parking works in Jasper. It may mean not going as far as what we've proposed. It may mean something in the middle, but we know that what we have right now is a severe limitation. And we know that more housing is built in other communities when these kinds of proposals are made.
Just to follow up with that, the challenge is, of course, parking and decoupling parking from housing, facilitates more builds. Are there communities out there or ours might be even easier to work with, not saying it would be easy, but working on parking strategies to help alleviate the challenges that we all know we're going to see with town. Everybody here in this room, I know, probably feels the friction about it, but again, the benefits may outweigh the negatives. But are there other communities working on parking strategies to kind of deal with these scenarios?
Your worship, yes, there are. The one most similar to us, dare I name it, is the town of Banff. Very similar situation in terms of there being a housing shortage and a lot of visitors. Sylvan Lake is looking at a parking strategy, and the city of Edmonton and the city of Calgary are also doing that. So that's just in the in the Alberta context, but it's part of a growing need in municipalities everywhere to rethink how we think about parking needing to be on site. Parking is still needed, but if we think of parking as a community amenity versus something we must have on each leaseholder's property.
Good. Go ahead, Councillor Waxman.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland, through you to Director Sanders. I heard a number of residents speak about the Airbnb kind of concept and wondered if there are limitations when as we expand the options to ensure that these are homes for individuals rather than being let out to people on a short-term basis.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland, to Councillor Waxer. We recognize that in the immediate term, what Jasper needs is housing. We also recognize that one of the limitations on our housing supply are PHAs, the short-term rentals. Our strategy right now has been to focus on the provision of units and long-term rentals, recognizing that a subsequent discussion, which will be frankly difficult for the community to have, about what do we do with PHAs. So in the short term, and I recognize this is short-term thinking, is change the land use policy so we can get those rules changed so more units can be built. But we, in short order, also need to have a frank discussion looking at PHAs directly and what are the implications of having them, not having them, having a cap. Do we phase them out? There's all sorts of options, but there are big implications for people in Jasper if we change the rules on that. Did not want to conflate that discussion with the need for just basic housing and the rules for housing. So it's a topic to come.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Demotive.
Yeah, I apologize for earlier. I was trying to tell myself, just follow the procedure, and then you fall into the natural flow of things. And so when Ms. Thomas was bringing up the amount of people that participated in this exercise, I was just wondering if I can get some help from administration on sample sizing in communities and what's an acceptable amount, usually when you're going out for surveys, and do those results usually change with higher participation numbers?
Your worship, through you to Councillor Demoda, I've done a lot of community engagement, and in particular in April when we had invitations out for people to come for 2 hours to come and roll up their sleeves and work on tricky topics, and then same thing in May. I was personally really pleased with the numbers of people who showed up and then the time that they provided. In the city of Edmonton or larger centers, we could have many more people live in the center, but far fewer proportionately people actually participate and dedicate that amount of time. So writ large, how does that compare to what Jasper would normally expect of Jasperites? I haven't been in Jasper long enough to know that question, but when I make a comparison to larger centers, it was pretty good. In terms of a survey, I mean, the survey is, spread through word of mouth and social media. It's not intended to be a statistically relevant survey. It's a means for us to give people an opportunity who want to participate, but not for 2 hours, just zip through and share an idea. And its purpose is not to be statistically relevant. The purpose is to provide an opportunity for residents, literally in this case, to tell us how comfortable or uncomfortable they were with the proposal, which is just simply information for you. Could it be better? Sure. Is it good enough? That will be, for you folks as elected officials to decide.
Well, we appreciate that level of clarity, and thank you for, not only the people here, but the ones that will be viewing online. The other comment I made while I have the mic quickly is that Mr. Nielsen made comments about rents here and We've done some work and are part of the living wage network, and that's not to say that, you know, the reflection on minimum wages in the community, but when we see rents go up, and we feel it too, because we have friends here that are renting, and when your rent goes up $500 a month, you know, traditionally, the concept is that 30% of your annual income goes towards rent or your mortgage. And so if you get a $6,000 a year increase in your rent, that's $20,000 that you should be getting. And I don't know of many people that are getting that bump every year. So it's painful, and we're facing that right now. I look at, you know, the other communities that are in the living wage network, and the closest ones to us that are participating right now are about $17-18 less per hour than Jasper. When they initially did this in 2023, Canmore was the highest at $38.80. I don't know where they are now, but since the fire here, ours has gone up from $24 to just under 32 an hour. So it's just we get what's going on in that area, and we've been strongly advocating for some changes, and we need that help in our community. Thank you.
Councillor Kelleher.
Thank you, Mayor, and then I'll treat to Ms. Sanders. I do have concerns about parking congestion, as was just here today. So my understanding, if I'm correct, that I can be a property, and my husband and I have 2 cars, and I go to garage suite, and I have a family move in, they have 2 cars. I turn my basement into a suite, and we have 2 people down there, and they have 2 cars. So now we have 4 extra cars, and the person down the road does the same. Like, what? Now we're going to create a parking congestion for Jasper. Do we have an idea of what's our strategy for that? Because if we look at Cabin Creek and we say people that rebuild, and each of them add a suite there, and there's no parking for the new build or the old build, like, what are we gonna do with all these extra cars?
Your worship, through you to Councillor Kelleher MP, who's grinning with her question. The parking rules right now are such that anecdotally, we have many situations which are exactly as you described. The proposed amendment to the land use policy would leave the leaseholder the freedom to choose how much of their personal land they would like to use for parking. So if I, as a leaseholder, am really worried about having a place to park and I don't want to worry about the street, I'm going to make sure I make and I use the space that I have on my land. I do imagine that there will be circumstances from time to time, or maybe quite regularly, where there could be more cars with a site associated with a property than we experience right now. Part of what we're inviting with the community parking strategy would be to think about, well, how could we culturally in Jasper not have quite so many cars, or discourage, like my family of 4, we could make do with 1 car instead of 2. And how would we move around town to do that, and think about that? But then also, as a municipality, as administration, how can we do more of some of the really good things we are doing to support people to not use their cars much in town or at all? So that could be the transit system that we've already invested in. That could be, like, Jasper has an amazing mode share for non-vehicular traffic. Like in Edmonton, I think the mode share for bicycles is 4%. In Jasper, it's 39%. So there's some neat things happening here that would involve a cultural shift for sure. But always with what we're proposing, there's an opportunity for each leaseholder to have the freedom to choose how much parking they want to have on site. And then the invitation is, as a community, how do we want to encourage moving around in ways other than a car, which will suit, if you're 8 years old or you're 80 and you're not driving, that's good for them.
I want to ensure that questions that were asked by members of the public are answered, and so I got a list. I hope we can go through it quickly. Starting with the response to the PHA question. One of the concerns that arose today and is in the letters that we received is safeguards against the almost immediate conversion of new housing units to PHAs. So accepting your comment that the whole PHA question is different and deep and troublesome. What assurance now does the public have that if we accept these amendments and advocate for a policy to allow many more suites, those suites don't become short-term rental accommodation for traveling public?
Your worship, I think there is a distinction to make between two different kinds of PHAs. So one is a room to rent, which is like the old bed and breakfast thing. I don't think that's what we're talking about here. What we are talking about are secondary suites. So in 2022, there was an amendment to the land use policy that allowed secondary suites to be used for short-term rentals. If council is worried about that conversion, one strategy would be to make a recommendation to Parks Canada to rescind that policy. And then that would for sure deal with it. On the plus side, my colleague Leanne Pelche beside me, our housing manager, who has the accessory dwelling unit incentive program, it is oversubscribed in less than, well, 2 weeks. It opened on yesterday. And we have 31 applications. Now, for an applicant who is looking for an accessory dwelling unit, so this is in a part of town that was not damaged or people rebuilding. If they choose to construct a secondary suite or an accessory dwelling unit, and they take the funds for that unit from the grant program, it must be a long-term rental for 10 years. So, and we have 31 of those applications. So that to me is actually a pretty good indicator that folks out there that are wanting to build an accessory dwelling unit are wanting to do it for long-term rentals, which is a really nice contribution to the housing pool in the community. After 10 years, our hope is they love doing it. Like our speaker even earlier today loved doing the long-term rental and not going to go back to the short-term rental, but we ultimately don't have control over that unless we change the rules for PHAs.
Go ahead, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, your worship, just to complement what Director Sanders was saying, PHAs, we need to distinguish between what's physical construction and how it's used. In other communities, there's often discussions about owning versus renting. And at the planning level, that's actually not really a concern of planning and development. It's what gets built, not who's in it and what their tenancy is. And so we just need to say that same thing about PHAs at this level. There are also other tools to deal with that. And I stand to be corrected, but I believe that the current regulations say that garage suites and garden suites cannot be used as PHAs. So there is already some limitation there. If council wanted to further limit PHAs, you do have tools available to you, specifically municipal business licensing. So the municipality does license PHAs as businesses. Council has additional, could choose to limit the number of business licenses available for PHAs in some way. Now that's a policy choice that council would have to think deeply about. But again, I just want to make clear that that's very different than what gets built. It's a reasonable concern to say, well, we do as a community want to have more living spaces. And we do as a community want to make sure that those living spaces are available for long-term residents, not nightly accommodation, both really important things. But the tools to ensure that they're available for long-term accommodation are not just land use policy. Right, so council, if there was an additional matter that came up around increased regulation around future PHAs, that would be something council could raise and direct administration to do some work on. But it actually would be about the land use regulations.
Thank you for that. Deputy Mayor Wilson.
No, I was actually gonna speak to Kathleen's concern about garage and garage suites, and I already knew what CEO given and shared about them being required to be long-term rentals.
Go ahead, Councillor Hall.
Thank you very much, Mayor Ireland. I have a quick question and a comment. The pre-fire deficit of 759 and the post-fire loss of 617, that's dwellings or beds?
That is dwellings, so that could be a 4-bedroom house would be the one dwelling. And each apartment in an apartment building was considered a dwelling.
Thank you for that. And I do acknowledge that the rent increases have hurt renters, but I also, we're 1,376 dwellings short, so that's another reason why there isn't, it's hard to find a place to live here. Yeah, and back to a comment that Ms. Thomas made earlier about what would the impact be, the impact would be housing, 1,376 dwellings. I absolutely understand the fear of how decoupling parking could, you know, add more cars to your streets, but I think as a community, we need to reframe how we think about parking requirements. This is about ensuring that as much building space as possible can go towards putting a roof over someone's head. This is about building vibrant neighborhoods. And instead of viewing cars as moving in, think about the families, the children, the small business owners, hospitality workers, grocery store clerks, teachers, healthcare professionals, emergency response personnel in our community. They are who moving in, and this has been said a few times, and it doesn't mean that no parking can be built. That's up to the developer and the builder. One question that's kind of come up in my head is, what's more anxiety inducing and likely to keep you up at night? Trying to find a place to live or a place to park? I'm sorry, right? So there's that. And also too, I think this isn't about, like, all due respect to everyone here, I don't think any of us are going to see the impact of these changes in a big way, because this is about the future, our children, our children's children. Like, if all of these went through tomorrow, I really don't believe this would, the town would be, it's not going to happen overnight, is my what I think. This is about just about shifting how we think about building homes in a town with very limited space, the national park, and leaning into the sustainable public transit system that we're developing and continue to grow. About creating opportunity for more available affordable housing in town, and it's about making Jasper more livable for everyone. And back to the youth, I had a conversation with Melissa Day upstairs, who did some engagement with the youth around housing and what they see. They just want, first of all, extra rooms in the senior center for family to visit from out of town, and they can make sure that everyone has a place to live. Those are my thoughts. My other I do have a question. Another thing that came up in the engagement was around infrastructure and the cost of extra infrastructure, and I'm wondering if there is a plan, or if you can speak to how that might work.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Ireland, to Councillor Hall. Municipality has in place right now what's called an off-site levy bylaw. And what that requires is any moment that there is additional commercial development or residential development, that there's a levy for the new part of the development. The purpose of that is to pay for the additional downstream capital costs to municipal infrastructure. Council, you will see in the weeks and months to come an updated offsite levy bylaw. So we're paying attention to that. Further, my colleagues in the operations department are completing their utilities master plan. So that's getting really specific at what kind of infrastructure is needed at which population thresholds we find ourselves in Jasper. So the work to think through both our current infrastructure situation and what we will need with additional population or additional dwelling units is being looked after.
If I may,
Go ahead, Councillor.
if I may have one more question. This came up, I believe today, and I've heard this in the community about a need for more commercial beds, more hotel rooms. And are you able to speak to the commercial cap that we had? I think that it's been allocated to the 2 hotels that were destroyed.
Through you, your worship, to Councillor Hall, yes, the remaining square meters of commercial floor area was allocated to the 2 hotels that were destroyed by the fire equally, and that took place in January. So their building plans, I presume, are going to take that into account. If we want additional commercial floor area, we're going to need an act of parliament to pull that off. So I would propose that would be a very appropriate discussion for us to contemplate when we work on the town plan. There's a chicken and egg piece here. Does it make sense to have more commercial when we can't house the people that we need to house right now? And of course, if we have more houses, it may or may not mean we actually have many more people, but we'll see how that shakes out. And then, of course, we will need additional commercial and industrial use when that flushes out. That's an appropriate discussion to have when we get into the town plan in 2026.
Councillor DeVota.
Thank you. In the past, Parks Canada had some regulations, and if you were gonna build in the commercial district, you had to go under for parking and supply parking. Under your buildings, and we've seen some examples of that. Some of the buildings don't get used for that. There are a lot of garages in our community, as in many communities throughout Canada, let alone Alberta, that don't get used to park cars because their garages are used for storage units. And I'm just wondering, you spoke to a lot of usable space for housing being used by parking in our community. I wonder if there's an opportunity for both, whether, you keep the parking, whether it's street level, below level, and then building over that. Encouraging carports as opposed to garages with dwelling units on top of that. So we can take advantage of both that extra space, but then house people above that. Could there an opportunity be available to increase the housing stock in our community, but then also deal with, the 2 people per car issue that seems to be an ongoing trend across North America?
Your worship, one observation I would make through you, your worship, to Councillor Demota would be, I'm thinking of a variance application that was on my desk this afternoon for a 5-plex, and it could have been a 6-plex, but they only have room for 5 spots. They could have gone to 6 places, but I have a suspicion that the only way they would have done something creative with the building is if it was economically viable. So if a solution to do a carport instead of a garage or underground parking, if it was economically viable, I think we would have seen it in Jasper prior to now. And it always remains an option for any builder that wants to incorporate parking on their site.
Yeah, so just looking at the survey and then, the concerns about the parking and we keep saying, well, it's up to the property owner and all that stuff. But I think too, with getting, this information there, I think the community wants us to take responsibility, and I know I'm being master of the or captain obvious here, to take some responsibility about promoting, what we could do, and it's going to fall under our laps on to our decision making, and I think we need to try to come to some very creative ideas. And I think with what we have right now structurally, yeah, we need to increase. We've heard people say we need housing, but how are we going to do that and solve or at least mitigate some of the parking issues in the community? We need to find a way to incorporate both if that's the trend, because we can't tell people you just can't come here and drive.
We heard from a number of residents. Guys, I want to respect the fact that they took time out of their day to come and present to us, some of them in person, some by letter that we have received. One of the ones in person asked a specific question. You addressed it in your opening comments, but I'd like, just on the record, the nature of the recommendation that council might make. The question essentially was, how does this process work? What can we expect from Parks Canada? How much time might it take? Might we be, I don't mean to put words in the presenter's mouth, but might we be spinning our wheels? We can make a recommendation, but it's not us that makes the final decision. So looking forward, what might we expect in terms of the time it takes to get a response from Parks Canada to whatever recommendation council might come up with?
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. We We administrative planner people have been working shoulder to shoulder with our parks colleagues since the fire. And have a really, really good, solid administrative relationship. All of the proposals that are in front of you, Parks is aware of. And my expectation, so this is little old me, would be, council, you make a series of motions and decisions and their recommendations to the superintendent. What that does is it gives me some license to go and explicitly have a conversation with Parks about, so this is what council on behalf of the community would like to see in terms of changes to the land use policy. Up until now, working with our Parks colleagues every quarter, and there's another, June is one of those quarters where there's little tweaks being made to the land use policy. My expectation is we'd be looking at some more substantial changes to the land use policy using council's recommendation. So the wording of the recommendation is that the superintendent consider it. The superintendent has a number of planners working for Parks right now. My expectation is municipal planners would work with Parks planners and we'd come up with text to change the land use policy, and over an amount of time that I can't predict because I'm not gonna make a commitment on behalf of my Parks colleagues that the land use policy would be amended and we would see if they're game to play the way the community would like to go. So short answer is we'll work with them to attempt to implement what your desire is as a council. And the lines of communication will be open between ourselves and Parks, but I'm not in a position to provide a timeline on behalf of another organization.
Fair, thank you, Mr. Gibbon.
Your worship, the only thing I'd add to what Director Sanders raised is just, Parks obviously has different obligations than the municipality. They have certain obligations to public consultation under, legislation that they're bound to at the federal level. We are obviously not in control of that, nor are they. They have obligations that they need to meet. I think the discussion for Parks ultimately would be, which of these, if any, would they see as substantive changes that would require that level of public consultation, and which ones might be more amendments that might be able to be dealt with sort of, at the local level. And that's some judgment that they'll have to apply, but they do have obligations for consultation. As the municipality, we're obligated to consult with our public that you as council represent. They have an obligation to consult with all Canadians because they are, stewards of this land for all Canadians. So that will be some discussion that will have to happen, within the halls of Parks administration. The other thing I think is only fair to acknowledge is that some of these are substantive changes. And there isn't currently a permanent superintendent in the position for Jasper National Park Field Unit. So, I think that we need to acknowledge that Parks has some obligations that they need to meet, that they'll have to sort through, and they're undergoing leadership change. So both those, just in terms of context, those are the things that are happening that are outside the municipality's control. What is within council's control is to establish the direction that you would like to see and to formalize that. And that's essentially what these amendments are about and what the public hearing today.
Thank you for that. Councillor Waxer.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. Through you to Manager Pelletier. I heard you speak about using the word bold and the requirement under the grant of the $9.4 million with the grant. What is the requirement from council in terms of making, and from the community in terms of making bold changes? My understanding was that if we were to stay status quo or not make significant changes, that we're really not eligible for this grant that would assist us in moving forward.
Thank you, Councillor Waxer. So one of the requirements of the HAF application was that we create a housing action plan. Within that, we identified 8 initiatives that are all proven in other communities and that the CMHC recognizes specifically as best practice for half funds. We were successful in our application for $9.4 million, and we do have commitments around those initiatives. In the application, it was very clear that the wording of those were, we would review land use policy and suggest amendments. It was, we would consider reducing parking requirements. So we're obligated to have these discussions. If tied to each of our initiatives are milestones and completion. If we do not meet our housing targets, or we don't meet our milestones or complete the different initiatives, then there is a potential for the Housing Accelerator Fund and CMHC to claw back some of those funds. It is for communities that are at a point where they're ready to implement some really transformational policy and process changes. And so our application stressed bringing those to council and seeing where we are as a community to embrace those.
Thank you. And I thought I would just make another quick comment that having spent time in the last few years in some large and congested cities, I have been surprised at how, not surprised, but I've observed that people change their habits and become more connected to the transit systems, take full advantage of car sharing and other types of services. So we as a community have been accustomed to having space for parking and near to our homes or right beside our homes. But perhaps if we moved forward, people would begin to make those transformational changes in their lives and look to alternative ways to move around, because absolutely people will need vehicles to get to the city, and they will need sometimes a vehicle even within the community. But I remember being just astounded at people with really high incomes living in the center of Montreal who didn't own a car and were very comfortable with the car sharing situation, and just used it at whim for the trip to IKEA or out to the countryside. Thank you for that.
Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think you were alluding to trying to answer some questions that were asked by presenters, and one of the presenters did ask a question regarding 2 levels of commercial, but then rental on top of that. Do we have provision for that currently, or in the proposals? Would that be feasible if additional commercial space were to be available?
Yes, through you, Mayor Ireland, to Councillor Melnick. Much as CAO Given was mentioning a few moments ago about really what we're talking about is the form of the building and how the building is used can be different. Typically, though, when a building is being built because of safety code issues, the builder needs to think about what is commercial and what is residential and fire separation between the two. But there are a growing number of examples where even first floor or second floor can be far more flexible on whether or not it's commercial or residential. Right now, the rules provide for second floor to be commercial for resident-oriented commercial uses. The catch is we just don't have a commercial floor area availability via parks. But the buildings can be built in anticipation of additional commercial use, for sure.
Thank you. There was one other question on infrastructure. And I wrote it down that will the town infrastructure accommodate the increases in the density. And I'm thinking that that question may have been not just in the new area or in the area that was burned out and where infrastructure is being replaced, but in existing residential areas that if additional densification would happen, is our infrastructure in the ground capable of accommodating the additional water, sewage, and so on?
Your worship, the utilities master plan is being completed right now, so actually in a handful of weeks, we'll have a really definitive answer to that question. What comes to mind for me are some neighborhoods in Edmonton that were built at the same era of some of Jasper's older neighborhoods, where they desperately oversized the infrastructure, so they desperately need more people and need more waste flowing so that the system works more efficiently. I'm not saying we're in that situation, but my spidey senses are the utility master plan is going to be very interesting to tell us how much more units we could accommodate without doing too much infrastructure upgrades in terms of size. But of course, maintenance is a different scenario. So between the utility master plan, we'll have a definitive answer. And when we know exactly what we're looking for, where the switch is that flicks to say, whoa, we need more infrastructure, what's that population threshold, then we can tailor our offsite levy bylaw to be accurate and appropriate. And then when we have new units or additional commercial floor area, we'll be able to have an offsite levy that is going to cover those additional costs, so it's not on taxpayers. So new development pays for the new development things.
But your worship, additionally, I would just maybe make a bit of an observation that one of the things that the utility master plan will tell us is a little bit about what our current flow rates are in a bunch of different areas. I think, as Jasper will recognize, just because there's a single family home doesn't mean that there's a small single family in that home. And so I'm not sure that there's a immediate correlation between a duplex or a secondary suite, being added to a property and increased flow. It just might mean that people that were previously sharing a house, a single family home, might have independent and more private living spaces. So certainly if we talk about adding 6-story apartment buildings, which is a part of the package, that would be substantially different, full acknowledgement there. But increasing what we would call gentle density in many areas of the town might just mean that fewer people are sharing homes that were designed for single families, and they're actually able to have independent living spaces, which might not really impact flow rates. We saw through the wildfire, the people that were able to demonstrate that they were living and working in Jasper at the time of the wildfire was over 8,000 people. That starts to tell us how many people are already living in Jasper in the summer. And so in terms of our flow rates, I don't think we need to immediately accept that drastic changes would be needed in order to give people their independent private living spaces by creating new units.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
For myself, I have one final question. At about 4:30 yesterday, after the deadline passed for submission of receipt of written submissions, council received a package of 9 submissions, about 12 pages. We received a what we heard document that was many pages long, and another document, the presentation, effectively. Will all of that material be available on our website, if it's not already, to the public, so that they can understand the information that was before council for its deliberations today?
Your worship, the draft What We Heard report was put online on the Engage Jasper website this morning. Our presentation, if it's not already there, will be there shortly. And I understand that the letters that you receive will be part of the minuted package for today's meeting.
Thank you for that. If there are not further questions for administration from councillors, we are still in a public hearing, which we should conclude in some fashion. as I indicated at the start of the public hearing, words have somewhat different meaning. So adjourn does not mean close, but close means close. And so we need to consider whether we have heard all that we wish to hear, need to hear, so that we can move into deliberation mode, or do something else. So I invite councillors to consider whether anybody wishes to make the motion now, so we can advance toward the end of the public hearing.
You do have the option.
Councillor Keller.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I would like to make a motion that we adjourn. And the reason I would like to do that, this is, we have many displaced Jasperites that may not have received this information yet or had time to look at this information. We also have many community in the community. People are very busy right now. This conversation is just starting to come up. And I think if we adjourn this meeting till July 8th, that would give people a couple of weeks to submit some more letters to us, some emails to us, and to get their perspective. It's a big decision to make. We're changing our pattern, we're changing what we're used to, we're changing the landscape of Jasper. I know it's not going to happen overnight, but I think even as councillors, you know, I mean, I'd like to hear more from our community members, and I'd like to hear more from our community members that are away living, that are planning to come back, and that's just my perspective. So I'll make the motion that we adjourn.
Just for clarity, the motion is that this public hearing be adjourned until 1:30 PM on July 8th, which is our next regular meeting. And you've indicated you'd like to hear more, so we're going to suggest that maybe that motion be augmented with provision that there be a time limit for receipt of further written submissions. What we had was 4 o'clock yesterday for today, so 4 o'clock on the 7th would reflect the same. If that's of interest to you, I'm not trying to make your motion for you.
No, I'm good with 4 o'clock on the 7th of July for written submissions.
Thank you for that motion. The councillors wish to speak to the motion. Councillor Demoda, I saw your hand earlier.
No, I support that and give people the opportunity who weren't able to be present today to view some of the conversations and as it came from the community, and then also give the opportunity to give feedback. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Wilson.
I appreciate the intent of the motion, although I'm not in support of it. I think we have the opportunity to move this forward. It still does have to go to Parks Canada. It's still like what comes out of this meeting will not be acted upon for, you know, if we make some decisions today, you know, a month or two from now. And people are, some of this does affect people who are actively designing their buildings and applying for permits, and any ability for us to make a move earlier, I think we owe it to our community. So I think we got to act.
Anybody else wish to speak to the motion? I will speak that. I appreciate the comments from Deputy Mayor Wilson, and I am aware that for those in a position now to rebuild, this may be a critical juncture, and it would be good for them to know sooner rather than later what the rules are. But nothing is unfolding particularly quickly in terms of this coming down to an end, and we don't know how long it will remain at Parks Canada, whatever our recommendation happens to be. But I am sensitive to the fact that residents have indicated both in the letters that we received and orally today that they feel rushed. I'm not sure that that's reflective of anything. The numbers I counted, certainly 300+ people engaged with it, which I think is good for Jasper. 9 letters and 7 representatives today, so I'm not sure that we will gain much. On the other hand, I would hope that we might gain the trust of the community if we give people an opportunity to have their voices heard. And it may be that we have heard all that we are going to hear. But I would err on that side rather. 2 weeks in this environment is to me, I think perhaps worth it in the circumstances. So I would support that motion. Anyone else? Councillor Hall?
If I may, just a technical question, if we adjourn today until you said July 8th at 1:30 and we close it then it's information that we send forward to recommendations to Parks Canada, is that correct?
Well, once we close the hearing, then we have the information that we have, and that is the information upon which we base our decisions. So we will close, we will deliberate, we will pass motions. That will be the recommendation. So we have to get to closure first to make the decision. Councillor Mellon.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just again, another point for clarity, if we were to vote in favor of adjourning and reconvening at 1:30 on July 8th, that would be for the purposes of considering what we heard today, plus any additional correspondence. But would that also afford an opportunity for additional public presentations on the 8th as well?
I think so. If we're not closed, I would think it would. Having not been through this process, I mean, if it's open, it's open, it seems to me.
Your worship, I think, if I may, in other communities during a public hearing, you might have a delegation portion of the public hearings in essence, which we went through, and then you move on to, the other parts. Council has asked administration some questions. We don't quite have that formalized. Again, we're practicing and we can build process out of this. So if council wished to, entertain additional presentations at a future date, in the same public hearing, essentially happening in 2 parts, you could do so. There's nothing that would prevent us from that. In the future, we might want to define sort of, okay, this is the period where we're going to receive comments from the public. But we don't have that in place now, and so council would have that ability if you wish to.
Before I call the question, is there sufficient clarity on administration as to what might happen if this motion passes? Okay. All right, I will then call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? There is 1 opposed. That motion carries. So this public hearing stands adjourned until 1:30 p.m. on July 8th, 2025. And we will accept written submissions until 4 p.m. on July 7th. And as I understand it, you will accept oral submissions on July 8th when we reopen the public hearing. All understood? All right. Thank you all. That takes us to agenda item 8, notices of motion, of which there are none. Councillor reports. Any councillors have reports to deliver? Councillor Waxer.
Yes, I met with the Communities in Bloom committee on Thursday. And they are planning to host on the Stewardship Day an opportunity for residents to help beautify the area by the underpass. And do get their hands dirty and work on making that area more beautiful. And so I just wanted to let you know that the Communities in Bloom committee is alive and working on projects.
Thank you for that. Councillor Waxer, other reports, Councillor Hall.
Thank you very much, Mayor Ireland. Yesterday morning, I had a Yellowhead Regional Library Board meeting. This morning, myself and most of council and administration were taking part in an Indigenous priorities around rebuilding session, and it was absolutely wonderful. And tomorrow I will be attending the transit facility grand opening. I'm hoping alongside everyone at this table.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Millick.
Later this week on Thursday, Councillor Demona and myself will be attending a board of directors meeting here in Jasper and an annual general meeting for Community Futures West Yellowhead.
Thank you, Councillor Keller-Rimby.
Next Monday, I will be in Hinton attending Evergreen's operational strat plan and board.
On the 12th of the month, I attended a flag raising to celebrate Filipino Independence Day. Despite the rainy weather, a very large crowd attended at Commemoration Park and hid under the shelter of the bandstand. The CN place, Zoom Bennett stage. It was very well attended. A great opportunity to engage with a really significant portion of our community. On Saturday, I was a participant, a panelist in a rural resiliency forum put on through UBC and Rural Health. I joined a panel with representatives from Hay River who had experienced floods, and the mayor of Princeton, BC, who also had experienced floods and atmospheric river. So we just discussed the impact on the health and well-being of communities, in particular mental health aspects. So it's a great opportunity to share information and realize that we are all in the same leaky boat. If there are no further reports, we have a list of upcoming events. National Indigenous Peoples Day is on June 21st, but we will celebrate that commemoration park on June 20th in order that more school children can attend. I will be speaking at 2 graduations next week. Diploma ceremony for Old Rocher on the 24th and Jasper Junior High School graduation on June 26th. Stewardship Day is June 24th as well. And of course, we have Canada Day pancake breakfast and flag raising on July 1st. And I don't have many particulars, but I will be attending an event with VIA and Parks Canada at the Heritage train station relatively early on the morning of July 2nd. He had an announcement to make, and I won't spoil that now, but there will be an announcement on Saturday morning. Hopefully not when the train arrives, but a little bit later. Yeah. Go ahead,
Is
Councillor.
that the event on July 2nd? All of council is invited.
If there are no other events to bring to the attention of council, I would invite a motion to adjourn in a normal sense of the word adjourn. Councillor Keller-Hempy, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed, we are adjourned. Thank you for your patience to our lengthy meeting, but we did not need a motion to extend beyond 4 hours.